Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's Talking Public Sector series discussion. And this morning we'll be focusing on higher education. My name is Astrid Spink, and I am the Sectors and Communities Manager for the public and health sectors in the UK. Part of my role is to build communities among these sectors, to provide members with the support and engagement opportunities, of which the Talking series is one. I'm assisted in this role by our Public Sector Community Network panel, including Kevin Ellis, who is on the call today. This morning, we will be hearing from Karel Thomas, Executive Director at British University's Finance Directors Group, or the BUFDG, on the work of this group and supporting finance professionals in the higher education sector. This will be an opportunity for the BUFDG and ACCA communities to come together to develop a strong approach to supporting our respective members. Before we start, a few housekeeping rules. Please do turn your camera on if you can. It will be good to see you. However, please do stay on mute if you're not speaking to reduce the background noise. We'd love for this conversation to continue after the discussion, so please do add your LinkedIn profile or email address in the chat. You'll see mine is already in there. And if you'd like to ask a question, please either raise your hand or add your question to the chat. This part of the presentation is being recorded, but the recording will stop when we open up the meeting for discussion. I'll now hand over to Kevin to introduce himself and his role as a panel member and his help in developing this session. And Kevin will then hand over to Karel, who will open our session with a poll.
Okay, my name is Kevin Ellis. I'm Head of Financial Accounting at Trinity Laban Conservatoire of Music and Dance. It's a specialist higher education institution in Greenwich in South East London, and as the name suggests, it specialises in music and dance. I'm a co-opted member of the Public Sector Community Network panel. I joined, I think it was earlier this year, right at the start of the year. So, you know, we were asked what we could do to, you know, help bring in, help promote the sector to the network panel to the sector, and one of the ways was to, you know, promote it within the within BUFDG. So I think that's one of the reasons why we're here today. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Yeah, and so I must get used to the fact that it's BUFDG, how it's shortened.
Well, I don't know whether that's how I've always heard it say. I don't know if that's everyone else says. I'm sure there's plenty of pronunciations.
Okay, but no, that's great. Thanks, Kevin. And it was at your suggestion that this whole session came about. So thank you very much. So I'll now hand over to Karel, and I'll load the poll for you, Karel.
Thank you, Astrid, and thank you, Kevin, for organising this. It's great to join you. Good morning, I'm Karel Thomas. I'm the Executive Director for BUFDG, or BUFDG, or some people even call it BUFDG, but we've tried to dissuade them from calling it that, because it just doesn't feel right. So, for a start, Astrid, you've got a poll for us to see how many of the colleagues on the call today and whether they know that their university is a member of BUFDG. Give you a couple of minutes to, you don't need a couple of minutes, a minute to respond. I hope you all know about us. And like the University of Sheffield, where we were talking to Jama before we started the call. Jama's a great advocate of BUFDG, and the University of Sheffield was home to a former chair of BUFDG, as is Trinity Laban. Of course, Kevin, your Director of Finance, or Director of Finance and Business Affairs or something, a very long job title. Phil Harding is a great supporter of BUFDG, and probably, don't tell the others, but he's probably the best guy I've ever worked for. So you're very lucky.
Okay, we've got quite a mix here. I'm not sure if people can see the poll, but we've got there's 44% saying yes and 56% saying don't know. So hopefully we can clarify that as we go through and as you learn more about the group.
And somebody says the poll isn't working for them, but
okay.
That's your problem, Astrid.
Yes, sorry about that. The technology it was all going so well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But
thank you for inviting me, because we realised that many of our members of BUFDG, the individual members, and we call you members even though you don't pay a subscription, so that is paid for by your university. And I'll just move the slide on to tell you what is BUFDG. And it's we call ourselves the representative body for higher education finance staff, and most of you will be qualified accountants or part qualified or students, but many of our members are not accountants. They're members of other professional bodies like the Association of Corporate Treasurers or the Payroll Institute. We cover a huge range of job titles and qualifications, and it's really good to make that connection with an institute because we have so much in common. You can see from the slide there that what we do inform, guide and support and facilitate networking and development and partner and coordinate and advocate. I'm sure that you could apply that to almost any membership organisation in the country, and it certainly applies to ACCA. So if you want to borrow those words, Astrid, you're very welcome. It took us ages to come up with them. So what can we offer you? And my colleague Amanda has produced these slides for us, and I think you'll distribute them afterwards, Astrid. Is that the case? If you don't know what BUFDG is already, this is a handy at a glance resume of what we do for you. If you're part of BUFDG already and didn't realise that we did training courses and free e-learning, then this is something new that you've been missing out on. So do come over to our website, have a look at what free e-learning there is, and every member of BUFDG, every member institution can access some of the e-learning courses. There's a minority who don't pay the little bit extra to have the BUFDG Pro, and if that's your university, please do lobby your finance director to pay that very tiny bit extra on the subscription so that you can have that free e-learning. So hopefully you will get our weekly digest if you're in BUFDG, and that gives you a summary of news in the sector. We draw from all sorts of sources. We republish news from HEPI, Wonky, Times Higher, tell you about things that are going on in other organisations as well as BUFDG, so you don't have to trawl those sites. It's a real digest. We've pre-chewed the food for you. So what does it cost? It doesn't cost you individually anything. So you're members of organisations like I am, where you have to pay a subscription. And sometimes you resent that, and sometimes you think, oh, this is such good value. BUFDG, you don't have those thoughts because you don't have to pay. The finance director signs a purchase order around about this time of the year, and then that's free to whoever in your institution wants to look us up. So it's not just finance staff in finance offices, it could be finance staff in faculties, or colleagues in business schools. I know there might be a few business school colleagues on the call. If you want to look up BUFDG and join in any of the conversations, we'd be glad to hear from you. And there's the link for you to sign up if you haven't already got one. So part of this session is to explore how BUFDG and ACCA could work together. And I've had a look around your website and looked at a few back numbers of your magazine, which I think is great. Congratulations to whoever who pulls that together, Astrid. It's a really good professional magazine full of topical issues. And it goes into so much more depth than BUFDG can do. You're a bigger organisation with more staff. BUFDG has 8 staff, not all of whom are full-time. So we'd like to think that we produce a lot more, and colleagues do say to me sometimes, where's your office? How many, you must have a big team. Well, no, we haven't got a big team at all. But the fact that we give that impression is quite flattering. But ACCA are doing some really interesting work, I think, with in the realms of AI. A recent article in your magazine was looking at internal audit and AI. I think AI is coming to external audit quite soon. And that whole question of where the career of the accountant is going needs to be discussed, not least of which in finance departments of universities. I was talking to a partner of one of the main audit firms the other day, and he was saying, rather unflatteringly, that universities are behind the corporate world when it comes to finance systems and how they conduct their audit. Now, I think we've always got things to learn from the corporate world, but sometimes we can get ahead, and because we're less bound by some of the corporate reporting rules, we can decide through the SORT how we bend those corporate reporting requirements. And Jama, you mentioned earlier that you'd been part of the work that we did to prepare universities for the adoption of FRS 102. We're just about to start a project to revise the current SORT, the 2019 SORT. It will become the 2025 SORT. To incorporate the leasing standard and recognition of income standard. So 15 and 13, somebody correct me on that one, and any other changes that are coming through on FRS 102. So anybody who wants to get involved in that, keep an eye on the BUFDG discussion boards and website. We'll be very happy to have all your thoughts, and we will credit you at the end of the day. So if you haven't prepared for your external audit yet, I'm sure you all have, and I put something on LinkedIn earlier in the week about how we're approaching New Year's Eve on the 31st of July. We're thinking of you as you try and get those expense claims in at the last minute, trying to badger your staff. Get your expenses claims in before the end of the year. Nobody likes too many accruals, do they? So we're really conscious of what you do in your universities, and we want to support you. So do you have any ideas for ways that BUFDG and ACCA can work together? We'd love to hear from you. Astrid would love to hear from you. Are there any ACCA courses or training where BUFDG could work with Astrid and her team and Dorothy to give a higher education focus to it? Or do you think that you've got enough of higher education in BUFDG and enough of accounting in ACCA that there could be a really happy marriage of issues there? Are there any HE focused courses or training that simply doesn't exist at the moment? If you don't know about our e-learning suite, do have a look at those. It might surprise you what's there already. There's a lot of things about tax, which is peculiar in the university world, but things like payroll and expenses, employment tax issues, global mobility, procurement, anti-money laundering, bribery act, all that sort of thing is there, as alongside some courses on business partnering. So have a look. If you've got some good ideas, we'd love to hear from you. Because as membership organisations, it's no good at us just doing what we want to do. So some of you may have been involved through your membership of working groups such as payroll and expenses or tax group in a review that we're doing. And BUFDG has grown organically. I've been around probably far too long, but for about 21 years now, or I'm into my 21st year with BUFDG. When I started, I had one part-time colleague, and we've grown, and we do a lot more now than we did, but it's grown organically in line with member demands and what we've seen and what we've taken on from other organisations, such as the Funding Council for England. The Higher Education Funding Council for England used to offer a lot more support than the Office for Students does, and we've picked up some of their roles and responsibilities indiscernibly. I think it's not really been recognisable, but we're doing this big review. We'd like you to fill in a short questionnaire, and there's a link coming up, I think, and complete the survey. There we go. This will be distributed after the event, but do fill it in. Or if you don't want to fill it in and you'd like a chat, because you've got plenty of time on your hands just coming up to year end, Amanda or Joni would love to hear from you. Email, that's their email addresses. So this is our big team. Whoops. So Amanda used to be our head of tax. So some of you who've been around a long time and been in BUFDG for a while would know Amanda as our tax specialist. She moved away from tax to become our head of operations a couple of years ago and is doing a great job. She does all the things that I didn't want to do, and quite honestly, how I ever called myself an administrator, I don't know. When I look at what Amanda does, so much more professionally. Why didn't I do that years ago? So Matt's been around for a long time as well. You probably know that name. Andrea used to be at the University of Worcester as the tax manager, and we lured her away, and she deals with VAT, corporate tax, and anything else that isn't payroll or expenses. That falls to Julia, who's been around for a long time in the world of payroll and expenses. She must have started very young because she's not very old now. She's been with a couple of big firms, as have Andrea, and has worked in corporate land as well. So she's well on top of any payroll and expenses things. If your payroll group reports to HR, it doesn't matter. They can still access BUFDG resources. Rachel, I think Dorothy, you know Rachel, she's our learning and development manager. She makes sure that all this e-learning happens, and things like the TRAC conference and the Management Accountants conference. So we couldn't do without Rachel. And the linchpin really is Jill. Jill predates me as a BUFDG employee, and she manages all our events. Joni's our newest member of staff. She's our project manager who makes everything happen. That we've had a long list of projects, never got round to doing half of them until Joni came along. So we're grateful for her having left the University of Portsmouth to come and work with us. And Ashley is our procurement specialist. He has a background in procurement and was at the University of Kent at one time. So you'll see from our staff that a lot of them have had experience of working in universities. And I think that's really important because they can identify with your issues. I think having empathy for your constituents, as you'll know in your universities, is really important. Appreciating other people's points of view, not just thinking that it's all about you. You have to remember that when your academic colleagues say, I can't possibly get my expenses claims in because I'm busy at a conference. So bit of sympathy there. So that's the end of my slides. I don't know how I've done on time, Astrid.
That's great, Carol. Thank you, and thank you very much for giving us an overview of the organisation. You know, small but perfectly formed, as you say. You know, you've got this fantastic team behind you that all have experience of working within universities, so therefore can empathise on the particular issues that finance professionals will face in this sector. And you know, thank you also for sharing more about the resources that you offer. Hopefully the people on the call who are members of BUFDG will already be aware of those and will be able to promote them to others. I wonder now if maybe, given that this morning we'd love to hear from attendees as to how the two of us can work together, maybe if you could go back to your slide where you had the questions that you'd like to pose to the group. We could go through those. Also, I've just, given that you mentioned about the SORP review, it would be great if our members could be involved in that. So I've just put a little note in the chat with my LinkedIn profile and my email address. So if people on the call would like to get involved in that review or any other joint working projects, please do get in touch with me. And yeah, it's just a good opportunity. We both want the same thing. We both want happy finance professionals within the university sector. So let's work together to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's say something a bit more about the SORP review.
Of course.
We're on the verge of appointing a professional firm to help us with that review because we just can't rely on volunteers to do that anymore. The FRC needs it to be done in a certain way, and the SORP making body is actually Universities UK. So anything that vice chancellors are putting their name to has to be done absolutely perfectly. So look out for an announcement of who that is within the next few weeks. We do have a financial reporting group. Some colleagues will have been on that or aspire to be. If you aspire to be on that, please let me know, because that is the group that's going to be working with the development partner to revise the 2019 SORP. Obviously, as part of that revision, there will be drafts and consultations, and so look out for those. It seems like a long time ahead, but it will soon be here. So Astrid, we will work with the ACCA to make sure that you're fully involved, and obviously you'll put in a response to the consultation. But
yeah, no, thank you, Carol. That's great. And in fact, I was thinking of the survey you mentioned earlier, the SurveyMonkey link. If maybe once you send me these slides after the call, I can then make sure that I send them to everyone who's registered, and that way people have access to the link.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, no, that's good. Thank you. I mean, it's a good opportunity, isn't it? It's a good starting point for us working together. We've not worked together formally before, so it'll be good to, hopefully this discussion will spark more joint working between us.
One thing that we always say in BUFDG is that if somebody else is doing something really well, we will never replicate it or try and copy it. We will support another organisation who's doing something really well already to do it even better. We won't put our tanks on their lawn to do something that they're already doing. So
yeah, and I think that's one of the benefits of working in partnership, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Complement each other's offerings.